So you're probably gonna hear a ton of background noise because there are workers from the city at the road installing what appears to be fiber optics, probably. They're always improving that system for the internet and a million other things. So there'll be a lot of background noise, more than likely, but luckily we're in the back part of the yard, so maybe it'll be a little bit quieter. Okay, so yesterday I said that my goal was to separate some of these pumpkins out over here. You can see I still haven't cleaned up the plastic. I don't know how long I've been saying I need to do that, but it'll be easy just to rake it up and put in a trash bag, so I'm not worried. Now, the idea is they have all these pumpkins over there. All the chickens, they're eating really well on the pumpkins and they're doing okay. Now, for a day or so, I was a little worried, wondering if pumpkins were causing some kind of gas on their stomachs, which it doesn't appear to be because we lost a couple of meat chickens. But I came out last night and noticed that with all the covering and everything else we're providing, you would think that it would be warm enough, but they're actually still seeming to have trouble maintaining their temperature at night, or they just also have a tendency to kind of flock together and sleep really close onto each other. And it looks like the ones at the very bottom of the pile, especially if they're small, end up getting squished in the process. So that is definitely an issue. We're trying to work through as many pumpkins as possible, and this weekend we'll probably worry about processing chickens because I am just so crazy busy with it being midterms. In my semesters, I do a couple of semesters each term. So where people usually have longer terms, I have 7 weeks terms and fit multiple semesters into that time period. And what that means is that there is 16 weeks worth of work to be done in 7 weeks, and by the time I hit midterms, I'm already preparing for finals, and it is absolutely insane. So all of this plus homeschooling plus school myself, it's a lot, let me tell you. If anyone ever tells you that homesteading is easy, simple, and that it's not a full-time job, don't trust them, because I tell you what, even as doing it part-time, it definitely is a full-time job. You're working so hard all the time to do things. It is rewarding. I enjoy it. It's fun. It is absolutely exhausting all at the same time. So it almost feels like you're doing multiple full-time jobs at once between everything. Anyways, so these guys are eating all of these pumpkins slowly but surely. It's actually going really well. A lot of the pumpkins that are in there right now, they're out there because I was sorting through the pumpkins with my little sister last night to get all the ones that were rotten or at the bottom of the pile starting to go bad out, because they will kind of one apple ruins the bunch type thing, where if there's rot or mold on one, it'll spread to the others. It takes a little bit longer with pumpkins because they're so big. And a lot of times they have tendency to rot from the inside out though. So you may not even see rot on the outside, and they are already starting to rot on the inside. One, we saw a little tiny spot. It wasn't really rot, just like a little spot of discoloration. We take it inside, cut it open, and it was rotten all over the inside. So it's crazy how fast it spreads. But I just threw these over the fence while the chickens were sleeping, careful not to hit them, because they sometimes like to sleep right there in this little corner up against this black fencing. They sleep in a few places actually. They split up into groups, but so we are tossing these over. So some of them you can see are smashed in half, but the thing is that as these guys are actually eating these at a very rapid speed, you can't tell because we're continuously feeding them the pumpkins. I throw the ones that will not store at all, even for a couple weeks, over there, and then everything else we throw over here. And what happens is that, sorry, there's a pirate ant on my foot. What happens is that these ones that are cracked open, they'll get thrown over there first, and we'll be throwing several a day because there are so many chickens, especially with the meat chickens. And then once they're done eating, a lot of times all that's left is the rind and the top part where the stem was. So those will go into the actual compost, whatever's left behind, and continue to break down. And then once those break down all the way, we'll put them in the garden, and then put topsoil and mix it in with the topsoil over it, and then on top of that put a layer of mushroom compost to provide that fungi to help break it down further and give our plants nutrients. And we actually plant into the topsoil, but everything else will break down and mix together. Now, if you're not careful, absolutely you'll have pumpkin seeds growing everywhere. I don't particularly care because they won't really start growing in the winter time. By the time they start growing at a summertime, and honestly, if I get a ton of squash for free and they do well, so be it. But realistically, if they all start coming up and I don't want them there, I'll release a couple of our laying hens over there and let them scratch that up, and then it won't matter anymore because they're getting those seeds in that fresh stage where they have a lot of energy coming out. That is such a good food source for the chickens. So it's a win-win for us either way, and I really thought it would be cool to share that because some of you are wondering, there are all these free pumpkins or maybe a discounted price of pumpkins this time of year, what you can do with them. And while that video is coming, probably not until Monday or Tuesday of next week because I need to get it all put together. I actually did it in little pieces here and there because it's just been such a whirlwind. So you're gonna kind of see things out of order on the next couple of days, and that is okay. I should have really just dubbed this entire month pumpkin month. All of the end of October, all of November is just gonna be probably about squash and pumpkins and whatever else is going on sprinkled into it, and you're probably gonna get tired of hearing it, but I really enjoy it. This channel is as much for us and our records and kind of seeing how things go, because I tell you what, this time of year when there's nothing planted in the garden for winter or spring anymore hardly, you start to feel a little discouraged, and then you go back in your videos and you see all the growth you had the previous seasons and you're like, oh right, this is just the season too, and it gets back to growth. So that's really something that kind of encourages you to keep going, is seeing both where you've been and the potential. We do a huge amount of our growing in early spring, and so sometimes when it gets that summer month and there's only like okra and peppers and heat thriving crops like watermelons growing, it gets a little discouraging. You start thinking you're not doing the right thing, but really you're just in a different season. So just a little bit of encouragement if you're kind of feeling in that place. Now, all of these pumpkins, you can see they're gathered up. They're just kind of thrown into here, and they will both break down and be given to the animals, like I said. So if all else fails, this will just can be a living compost pile, which is fine with me. Either way, it's giving back. And whatever we throw into compost anyways, the birds are going to break down for us, and we'll just rake it out, like I said before. So it's really not that big of a deal. It's really great. And then we still have a ton of pumpkins left, so I'll go show you the pumpkin pile. I actually messaged my aunt to see if she wanted some for her animals, so they're supposed to be picking something up. It sounds crazy that we'd have this many, but I'm actually really grateful that we got so many because so many had rot spots and everything else. So when you're getting pumpkins either at a really cheap rate or for free, you just kind of have to take the good with the bad. Luckily, we have plenty to do with the bad. You learn how to compost, you learn how to feed it to animals, you learn what to do with everything while you're processing through. So it may seem ridiculous, especially if you don't have anything to do with the pumpkins, but I guarantee you, you make a post, whether that's for Craigslist or anywhere else, whatever the ad is for your area, and say, hey guys, you want some pumpkins? There would be people with animals that will come get the ones that you're not able to process or that have any kind of rot spots. So I don't want you to think that if you don't have the area to store things like we do, that this will be a bad idea because you'll be stuck with all this waste, because realistically, you probably won't be at all. Now, you may run into something we ran into where people want truckloads of pumpkins for free and they're not willing to drive an hour to get them, or they want you to deliver them. Don't fall into that, guys. There's so many people that want them. Just post an ad saying, hey, we have these pumpkins, you know, willing to meet, willing to whatever, if you don't want people on your property, or tell them to come pick them up if you don't care. You know, there's no point in doing extra work, especially when you're giving something away from free. I just want to say that because I think all of us has fallen into that trap at some point in time, and that's exactly what it is. It is a trap, and it is not worth it, especially when you do not have time to waste when you are homesteading. We are already so cut for time. There's never enough of it, is there? Okay, so here's what's left of the pumpkin pile. It is a ton of pumpkins. It may seem crazy, but this is so much less than there was. It's like a fourth of what it was, I would say. So the thing is all of these type squash right here, they're actually really pretty good for storage. So if we can clear out most of the jack-o'-lanterns, and this is what I'm talking about, when they look like this, these get thrown over there into that big pile that you saw. Because if they have soft spots like this on the outside, yeah, they're definitely rotten on the inside. And there are quite a few like that. So thankfully, like I said, they'll become soil for later on, and they'll definitely become feed for the animals. But everything else, jack-o'-lanterns are not made to last. They're made to carve, sell quickly, everything else, but they're still edible. So you can go ahead, I recommend processing those first, and then all the squash will store. Make room in a cool spot, not freezing cold and not too warm. I would say a good 65 to 70 is the best. I know a lot of people go down like 50 or so. Anything below that, I find that it actually damages the squash, and that's a mess. So what works for you may be different. For us, we have to really worry about a place that's not humid because we're on the coast, and it is really, really humid in southeast Texas. So this is kind of what we have left and what's going on out here. But one thing that I have learned over the last couple of days is some of the better ways to do pumpkins. So at first we were baking it at 350 and scooping it out off the rind, off the skin of the pumpkins, and then it was already basically puree, and we're putting that in gallon bags. But we discovered that we actually really can process a lot more pumpkins, and we like the taste of cubed squash, and actually the kids are eating it just barely baked and cubed. And so we thought for sauteing and other recipes, that would be a great side dish or a great main dish, and you can do so much with cubed squash. So we've started baking it for half the time, still at 350, for only about 30-35 minutes, maybe more, depending on how large your pumpkins are. And then cutting it off the rind just like you would a watermelon, cubing it and putting it in bags for other recipes, so that we have the stringy squash can act like spaghetti squash, and the puree can be for pies, cheesecakes, bread, things of that. And then the cubed squash is for anything else calling for squash. So you really can use it for just about anything. It's so packed with nutrients, it really doesn't go to waste. So I went inside and was gonna record how I cubed the squash up to show it exactly how I do it, in case there's any confusion or people just want to see that part. And the kids are doing the online portion of their schoolwork, so there's a lot of video noise back there. I came to see if by chance anybody had started laying, because we have laying hens, but I just really don't think that they're going to lay until next year. And it looks like somebody actually dropped a pumpkin in here where they should be sleeping, so I'm going to have to clean that out. Looks like we need some more shavings. All the sticks and stuff you see is some of the ochre that we fed to them. So these are some of those broilers that we bought that need to be processed. But I guess what I'm going to end up doing is making a separate video on just how I dice the squash. That way it can be showed off and what the final product looks like. It's really simple, but I'm going to get in there and work on cubing the rest of it while I still can. I know some of these videos will probably get repetitive, and I have a tendency to repeat myself. Guys, just gonna have to take the ADHD along with the information, to be real honest. So I'm gonna go work on that.